welcome to the Digestible Podcast. I'm Stacy.
And I'm Melissa.
And here at Digestible, we are going to give you the information you want in the perfect amount of time for your busy life. And we make sure the information is easily digestible. Get it?
Stacy and I both love to read the latest research and books by the experts, attend conferences and meet those experts, and talk about health and nutrition all day long. Stacy and I were finding that both in our personal and professional lives is that people are interested in these topics. They want to know the what, the why, and the how, but they don't want the deep dive podcasts. They're not going to take the time to read the book, so a Digestible Podcast was born.
So we are very excited today to bring you Kevin Finnegan. In addition to being very dynamic and one of the most fascinating people to listen to in anything related to supplements, Kevin has been working in the dietary supplement industry for over 15 years. He holds a master's degree in kinesiology and a bachelor's degree in physiology and chemistry. He is a senior medical consultant with Zymogen, which is a leader in science-based nutraceuticals dedicated to providing high-quality, innovative formulas that support integrative medicine and patient health.
Yeah, I love this. I love this because the more we're learning about how our food systems are not as nutrient dense as they used to be, a lot of people are starting to supplement, which is fantastic. But like he mentioned, and you'll hear in this episode, it's like the Wild West out there. So it's hard to know really what's effective and what's safe. And so he helps us navigate that. And so definitely listen in for that. And then we talk about GLP-1s and how to supplement during, instead of, after, all those options. And then one of the things for me personally, because I'm so confused about all the different kinds of magnesium out there, what kind I'm supposed to take. And so he gave us a little guidance there as well. So this is packed with really helpful, useful information for sure.
Agreed. Enjoyed this episode with Kevin Finnegan from Zymogen. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Stacy. Good to see you. And Missy, good to see you as well.
Start off by telling us and our listeners, what is the difference between a medical grade supplement and the supplements that we find on our drugstore or big box store shelves?
Yeah, this is probably the biggest question that comes across in the supplement industry. Because supplements aren't regulated the same way that drugs are, there's just a lot of confusion that are out there. The supplements are a little bit of the Wild West, right? You know, almost anybody can kind of order a raw material from all over the country, put it in a capsule or put it in a bottle and put it online. And the FDA actually says that this is okay to do. So, and that's not to say that, you know, general big box retailers are doing this. However, there are just a lot more levels of quality in the supplement field than there are in the drugs. It's just not regulated the same ways. The biggest things that typically we see difference in like the professional grade formulas and kind of the retail grade formulas is both the bioavailability, the testing that goes through. You know, we're talking testing that is both, you know, at the beginning of sourcing, during the production of the product, and at the end of the manufacturing. And then again, you know, the ingredients they often use in this. You know, even though that a lot of formulas you'll see like a general product, magnesium, for example, you know, it's not always the same version of magnesium, but let's say it could potentially be the same version of magnesium, like a magnesium glycinate. You know, what, you know, typical big box retailers will do is they'll just use kind of cheaper binders and cheaper fillers so that when they're going through the manufacturing process, they can kind of go through the speed a little bit quicker. And well, professional grade ones are just, they're never using artificial dyes and additives that are just going to kind of decrease the potential of what the supplement is trying to do. So I think the biggest thing is like look for three different ways about why they're a little bit different in the professional versus the retail. It's like the sourcing, you know, where they're getting the material from, the manufacturing and the testing, you know, what type of tests and certifications that they're going through, and then all the extra stuff that goes into it. You know, it's just not an apples to apples comparison like we get in the pharmaceutical space.
So explain a little bit about the bioavailability for our listeners who might not even consider something like that when looking at a supplement.
Yeah. Every patient's different, right? And every patient's different in how they're able to absorb what we call nutrients or food, and therefore supplements as well, right? We want to make sure that we're using products that are going to have the highest bioavailability. What that means is you're getting the most out of the nutrient to get absorbed properly into the system to do its job. So there's just a lot of different versions of supplements and ingredients that some are getting absorbed at 100% and some are getting absorbed at a lot less percentages. You know, often we just have to do a little bit more research into determine what is the absorption of this product versus the absorption of another product. And when we say products, it definitely could be the same ingredient there. So bioavailability is really just how much of that material a person is able to absorb it into the system and be able to be utilized for its purpose.
So then what would the difference be in bioavailability between the medical grade and a store?
Yeah, it initially comes from the research of the ingredients. You're often in professional grade formulas, you're getting patented forms of heavily researched forms of these ingredients. Research that's been done in clinical settings by the raw material supplier or by universities where they're saying, hey, okay, let's take a look at this product and measure it in the blood or measure it in another capacity to determine how are we utilizing this. Standard nutrients typically don't have that research. We know, hey, this ingredient does this in the body, but you don't know how much of that is getting absorbed into the body. So in reality, it's trusting the professional grade formulas to ensure that they're using patented forms that are research forms that are being used at that research level. Even though an ingredient could be like, yeah, we're using 100 milligrams of this material, but in the research studies they were using 200 milligrams, you want to use the 200 milligrams. So it just takes a little bit more research by the consumer. And a lot of times people just don't do that. They just kind of will shop based on price and the convenience side of it. But the medical providers who are utilizing supplements in their practice, they're often doing the research, right? They're trusting the brand to ensure that, hey, they've done their due diligence on these products, on these ingredients, and that we are going to be able to get the results that are intended for based off the research.
And you mentioned certifications on the bottles that the manufacturers are getting. What type of certifications are the ones to look for, to trust? What do they mean?
Yeah, there's a lot out there. And in fact, new ones come out pretty consistently. And it's not to say that the new ones that are popping up or these initials on the back of the bottle are bad, but there are some ones that are kind of higher level ones. The first one we always would recommend is getting a CGMP stamp of approval on a bottle. CGMP is Certified Good Manufacturing Practices. And that's the FDA's third-party governing system that goes in and inspects the manufacturer to determine that they're making it at a good manufacturing location and they're going about it the right way. So that's kind of your baseline for a lot of your professional grade products, and a lot of retail products as well will have the CGMP. But then you can kind of go up from there. There's CGMP and then there's NSF. NSF is National Sanitation Foundation. That's where we work with a lot of professional sports teams and professional athletes who want to ensure that there are no banned substances in there. It's just a higher certification, more strict standards that the facility that are manufacturing these goods have to go through, and it's another good stamp. So we can kind of just hit that level up from there. And then there's everything from TGA, which is Therapeutic Goods Administration. TGA is actually Australia's FDA. It's considered the strictest standards in the world for pharmaceuticals, right? So Australia has the strictest standards, more so than FDA does here. So that's another good, and a lot of manufacturing facilities will get that TGA stamp. And then there's ones that also go through pharmaceutical approaches. Look for brands that have, hey, we do pharmaceuticals as well. Even though the dietary supplements they're manufacturing aren't considered pharmaceutical, the facility itself has pharmaceutical certifications to it, saying, hey, we ensure that even though we're making this supplement, and it's still considered a dietary supplement OTC by the FDA, we're going through standards that are similar to pharmaceuticals, how we source, manufacture, test, bottle, and then get it out the door. There's more than that. USP is another good one as well. So I would just say, doing a little research is helpful, but that the medical providers that you're trusting with their recommendations, they're more so going to know which ones are going to be the best certifications.
So I want to jump in real quick, Kevin, because I still go to a conventional medicine doctor, and I think a lot of our listeners probably do as well. And I'll have a blood test, let's say, and I was low on vitamin D at one point, I was low on iron, and my doctor just said, okay, go get a vitamin D supplement and go get an iron supplement. But what it sounds like is if I just go to Amazon or I go online and I find one that's cheap and it says it's iron, it says it's vitamin D, that I have to be concerned with that false claims, bioavailability, fillers, and other ingredients in there. And so if I'm going online because my doctor doesn't say we have professional grade available at our office, what would you recommend we look for online? You said, so those certifications, and then companies that also make pharmaceuticals, and then is there anything else that we should be looking for? Like if I go to Amazon, can I buy trusted supplements on Amazon?
If supplements are the Wild West, the internet is even wilder. It is not to say that there can't be good brands on Amazon. You just want to make sure that, when you're looking at a product and you're looking at a brand, they're being delivered directly from that brand's facility. But what I mean by that is that it's not, their storefront, that they're connected, it's sold by the particular brand, that it's not a third-party seller. But you don't want to have too many change of hands on a supplement line. So again, a lot of good supplement companies out there doing it the right way, and they may be available online and they may be available on Amazon, but you want to ensure that if you're ordering it on the Amazon, that it's being sourced directly from and sold by that manufacturer, and then it's coming from their facility as well.
That's news to me.
Because
so Zymogen, for example, they have a storefront. If that's a trusted company, it's the company you work with, just
Yeah.
And Zymogen has a storefront on Amazon, and they have the certifications that we can trust. So companies like that, you go to their storefront in Amazon and order from them, or go to their website and order directly.
Right.
Okay.
And that's the reason why a lot of companies like Zymogen went online, because if you're not able to get good quality products and you're like, I'm just going to get something similar online, you're not really doing yourself the best opportunity to get the results that you're looking for. So companies like Zymogen and other brands like that, they'll have storefronts on Amazon, but they're operated by that brand, right? And you're getting it from the facility, and it's not a third-party person holding it in their garage somewhere, heated, or on their dashboard in their car for 3 weeks and then trying to sell it out. You want to avoid a lot of that. So, I think the goal for a lot of these companies is to ensure that their patients are getting good products, or consumers are getting good products, right? And they're getting good results. They're paying their hard-earned dollars for these things, and results matter. And that's something that, if you can, know what brands to partner with and do a little bit of research about, what certifications do they have? Are they, using the 100% pure forms of these ingredients? Are they testing for label claims? And I think that goes back to your, hey, if you just can get a D3 or an iron from wherever, a lot of big box retailers, the brands, they're just not testing for 100% purity, and there's been a lot of good research to determine maybe it's 40% of the actual iron is in that product, and it's not 100% iron. What I mean by that is there's fillers and there's additives in there to beef it up, but you're not really getting 100% of that material. And I think with certain brands, you can trust that they're going through those certification standards.
Great, thank you. That's great. We're going to shift a little bit because there's something else that's really hot topic. Maybe you can help us out a little bit. So a lot of people have been on this very popular, the GLP-1s, the weight loss drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy and Mounjaro and Zepbound. Are there supplements that do something similar to those drugs? So people don't have to necessarily be on the drugs, they could take supplements?
Yeah. No, I've never heard of GLP-1s or semaglutide. I don't know what you're talking about. No. And they're not going away. They're not going away. In these companies, the Eli Lillys of the world, they're doing more research, right? And we know that the results of people suppressing appetite and eating less is there. And, they're going to keep coming out with more literature associated with the usage of these semaglutides and GLP-1 agonists. However, there are a good amount of dietary supplements that will also support GLP-1 activation and partner along with what these semaglutides are doing, or potentially help offset some of the side effects as well.
Oh, nice.
So in regards to the ingredients that are acting similar to semaglutide and activating GLP-1, my first one is probably berberine. Berberine is typically used as an antimicrobial, but there's versions of berberine like the dihydro form of berberine, more so similar to a metformin, like your diabetes, blood sugar drug, but it still has GLP-1-like response to it. And so the idea behind what people are taking the Wegovys and the Zepbounds are because, you're stimulating GLP-1s and you're slowing down that appetite, control. Berberine will do that as well. So taking berberine, 20 to 30 minutes before your meals, people will notice a response to to eat a little bit less, to have less of a blood sugar response, help with glucose metabolism. So that's one that we absolutely will recommend, as an alternative or in a partnership with your semaglutides. And then we will also recommend a lot of fiber supplements. Fiber is a huge ingredient that many people just don't get enough in their diets. There's a lot of different forms of fiber, and if we can get it from our dietary sources, great. But forms like glucomannan is a type of fiber. It's a konjac fiber that very slowly breaks down within the gut lining. It will trigger a GLP-1 response in there. People feel a lot fuller before their meals. And so we're working that into people's programs as well to kind of help stimulate that GLP-1, feel fuller, be more satious, eating less foods, and that's what these GLP-1s are typically doing. They're working for weight loss, and we know that. We've seen the data, but the data also demonstrates that a lot of that weight loss is muscle loss as well. And about 40% of the weight loss is muscle. And that's the last thing that providers and patients would want. You don't want to lose out on that muscle. That lean tissue helps with fight off illness and disease and bone support and risk of fall fractures in the elderly. So you don't want to lose muscle. And to offset that, we want to ensure that we're having enough protein in our diets, right? And people are doing resistance training and exercising, but if we're also looking to incorporate, supplements, there's an ingredient called HMB. It's beta-hydroxy beta-methylbutyrate. Again, just HMB is the ingredient we use, and what that does is it stimulates muscle protein synthesis and stops muscle protein breakdown. So
wow. So that's a great thing to pair up with your GLP-1 so that you don't lose the muscle.
It's probably the biggest thing. Probably the biggest thing for us is, in the medical field when we're recommending partnership products to all your GLP-1s is, you want to offset the muscle loss and you want to kind of make sure that the gut doesn't have any secondary side effects. We often see nausea or the removal of a lot of, micronutrients and minerals in the diet. If people aren't eating as much, they're just not getting their multivitamins. They're not getting their vitamins and their nutrients in there.
They're not eating better necessarily, they're just eating less.
Just eat less. Yeah, just less material, right? And the fuel that we need for cellular health and enzymatic reactions come from our dietary sources.
Right.
So we often will recommend like a multivitamin associated with GLP-1, but then that HMB. That HMB for me is kind of a primary product that we would recommend to offset the muscle loss primarily, but to help the muscle build up on top of it.
So what you're saying is if someone's on a GLP-1, they need to be protecting their muscle mass by getting more protein and potentially taking something like HMB.
Yeah.
Or
amino acids. Amino acids, your branched chain amino acids, your leucine, your isoleucine, your valine. But HMB is that like single isometabolite from your protein that's going to do the work to support muscle growth and stop the muscle loss.
Would you find?
I would never say.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No.
And like a protein powder, or like should people take those amino acids? There's a powder amino acid formulas you can take.
They're all in there. So HMB is inside of amino acids and it's inside of protein.
Okay.
But it's just not enough to really move the needle to preserve lean tissue.
Oh.
Protein's comprised of a bunch of amino acids like leucine, and then leucine is comprised of isometabolites, one of those being HMB. So the research kind of looked at, we know protein for muscle, like you can make that connection. And you're like, what's the part of the protein? Oh, the amino acids are good at that too. And then you break that down even further, like, which versions of the amino acids? And that's where they determine the HMB. HMB is the one, but the research keeps showing that about 3 grams worth of HMB is the kind of level that we need to sustain offsetting the muscle loss that we often see with a rapid weight loss program.
And obviously you'd want to be taking these types of supplement regimens like under the care of a doctor. So you'd have your doctor say like, hey, I want to take the GLP-1s, but I also want to make sure I'm protecting, my muscle mass. Could you help me? And this might be something they can recommend.
Yeah, and a lot of medical providers are bringing in like body composition analysis into their practices. Those ones that are doing like DEXA scans or bioelectrical impedance analysis. We're like, okay, how much muscle do you have on your frame? I think the days of just looking at a weight is slowly shifting away. We're not just comprised of how much we weigh. It's like, well, what is that weight? How much of it is muscle? How much is it of fat? What do our bones look like? So it's good to see, I think, a lot in the industry kind of monitoring that. So yeah, if your providers are putting you on GLP-1, it's like, yeah, it might be nice to see what the muscle and the fat are doing as well when we're doing that. But I would absolutely hope that a lot of medical providers would kind of talk about the muscle side of it and ways that we could offset some of the side effects.
Okay, so if you're on a GLP-1, you want to protect the muscle mass and make sure you're getting your nutrients because you're eating less food. And if you're not on a GLP-1, but you want to lose some weight maybe or try to do something before going on a GLP-1,
Yeah.
you would want to do the berberine and the fiber.
Yep. And I would also put people on an HMB. I just think the benefits associated with muscle is going to help burn more fat, it's more metabolically active. It can help with fat loss. So if we are helping our patients, folks, like, hey, let's get some more muscle on the frame. Yes, of course, exercise is going to be a key component of that, but there's amazing research on HMB increasing lean tissue without any exercise. And we're not talking giant jumps to be a bodybuilder here, but we are talking about they're not losing any muscle just by putting on the HMB into their program.
Right. And then would it be similar if they're trying to go off the GLP-1, a similar type of regimen?
Yeah. I would say anybody who's kind of like leaning off of it as well, that's when you would say, hey, let's make sure the HMB's in there to preserve the lean tissue and support the fat loss side of it. But, you also don't want to just completely remove it and now you're like, oh, my appetite's back and I'm going to start eating more. That's when your appetite control ingredients like a berberine, like the fiber, even a multivitamin has some good, like when your gut's satiated and you don't have a leaky gut and you're kind of healed up, it's like that gut-brain connection is being stimulated and you're saying, hey, we're good down here. We don't need to be eating more bad foods. So that's a really good way to kind of slowly pivot people away if they're looking to get off their GLP-1.
Next hot topic, longevity and anti-aging. Tell us what we can be taking to live longer, look younger. Are there things out there we can do?
Yeah, and this is not going to slow down either, right? The fountain of youth has been, something that people have been reaching for since the dawn of time. But we just can see more within the industry, more focus on this, more social media posts about this. And I don't necessarily always believe that supplements are the key area here. I would always tell people, like, let's take a step back into the diet, the nutrition, the lifestyle modifications, the sleep, right? Those are probably going to be heavier core factors for longevity and age management medicine than most other things. We're talking about cellular health, right? We're talking about mitochondrial health. And while there are ingredients, like NAD, like fish oil, like resveratrol, even some good data on berberine and quercetin on slowing down the aging process, can all support. I would never solely rely on supplements to help long-term age management medicine and longevity aspects of it. I would say the core ingredients partnered with a good exercise program, a good nutrition program, proper lifestyle modification, stress. You can't out-supplement a bad diet. You can't out-supplement stress, right? It's just
no magic pill for the anti-aging.
No magic pill. There's some good data on like animal model research with some pharmaceuticals, rapamycin. There's really good cellular health and mitochondrial data on like using NAD or precursors. NAD is a coenzyme that helps convert food into ATP production. And that's just like all cellular health, right? It all starts at the cell level, and the mitochondrial is your powerhouse of the cell. And, ingredients like the resveratrols and fish oils and reducing inflammation, I think, is a key component, right? We're all just super inflamed the whole time. The body's just on fire. You're not going to take a bunch of supplements to just offset that. So controlling as much inflammation as possible, resveratrol, curcumin, fish oils. If you're saying, hey, what specific supplements are been shown for research? I do love the NAD or precursors to NAD like NR, nicotine riboside, or NMN. Those could also support cellular health and mitochondrial health overall.
I've never heard of NMN.
Exercise, nutrition. Yeah, it's just another precursor to, for NAD support as well.
And that's like energy for the mitochondria.
I'm not sure.
Right.
That is energy for the mitochondria. That's ensuring that NAD, which is a coenzyme in the cell, is helping that cell convert over production in overall cellular health. And we're not just like our cells are dying off, right? And that's the biggest thing. And over time, with an increase in age, we lose out on NAD. And that's a real big focus on the longevity community is how do we preserve NAD? Can we give it? It's really bioavailable in the form of NAD. So that's why people use precursors like NMN and NR to stimulate NAD production. But I would also say omega-3s, resveratrol, anti-inflammatory supplements are all going to be beneficial for you there.
I met someone the other day who said, I think I'm supposed to take resveratrol, but I don't know why. Why don't you explain resveratrol, what it is, and why someone would take it?
Yeah, we've heard about it for a lot of years, right? And probably in the 90s, it started coming out as being a key compound for antioxidant support, right? Reducing oxidative stress in the body. And then there was always that connection to red wine, right? You know, we have resveratrol in red wine. However, I think it's around 200 glasses of red wine is equivalent to doing like a standard 400 milligram of resveratrol. So we're just not getting it in there.
We can't drink it. We can't just drink all the resveratrol.
Yeah, 25 years ago, people were just like, I'm just going to do some red wine and it's going to give me enough resveratrol, and it's just never going to be the case. And that's probably why we saw so much talk about it, I think. It's just they had that connection and it was easy to understand what it was in. You know, we get it from our grapes. We can use it for primarily antioxidant support. So if there's oxidative stress, if we have like our cells that are on fire, we want to tamper those down. And there's a lot of ingredients in heavily in the polyphenol side of it, but resveratrol being a key compound of the polyphenols. There's other ones out there. L-ergothioneine is another really good compound that is a flavonoid that's reducing oxidative stress. It's scavenging free radicals, so we just don't have that extra stress on our cells and our system. And that's what causes aging, right? It's just like the oxidative stress, and just we're not able to replicate, good healthy antioxidants and get rid of everything. So we want to supplement with heavy antioxidants like resveratrol.
Missy, are you taking notes? Missy and her husband are big wine people.
And it's always like, if you're gonna do wines, the darker the better.
Yeah.
You can go away from the whites and the rosés. If you're really thinking, hey, which versions are gonna get you the most resveratrol? Those darker,
good,
heavier reds are
Pinot's
the
my
ways
favorite,
to go.
so I'm a Pinot fan.
No problems there. I just
Pinot
don't
Noir.
anticipate it's going to elicit the same amount of resveratrol you can get in a standard pill form.
Okay, fair enough.
Drinking the whole bottle isn't going to get you the dose you need.
No, there's other things at play there.
People who live in blue zones do drink a little bit of red wine, so I'm just saying. I'm not necessarily ready to give up, but I won't rely on it for my full dose of resveratrol. Fair enough. Okay, for sure.
Very cool. All right, so we would be remiss if we did not bring up one of the topics that I think everyone talks about, asks about, magnesium. Yeah. Everybody
Thank you.
is on magnesium or should be on magnesium.
But wait,
yeah.
Magnesium, how many kinds of magnesium? Because some is for headaches and some is for muscle pain, some is for helps you sleep, some is for cardiovascular health. Health is so confusing. Thank you, Stacey. Go ahead.
Yes.
Help us.
Yeah, and this year partnering with a medical provider can be beneficial, right? You know, we see like the snippets online or whatever, just like magnesium's good for this, and like well, probably, but what is the specific need of a lot of patients, right? You could supplement with the standard magnesium glycinate, and that's going to help over 300 enzymatic processes within the body. However, there's magnesium that's for smooth bowel support, your magnesium citrate, and there's magnesium malate in glycinate for like neuromuscular, but my legs are hurting, or I have restless leg issues, or maybe I have a lot of headaches and you need a spurt in magnesium, like magnesium L-threonate. So I always kind of recommend talking to a medical professional who's familiar with the different forms of magnesium, because you need magnesium may be different from somebody else's. But you're right, there's a lot of confusion out there. 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium, and because it's just associated with so many different processes throughout the body, we want to ensure that we're supplementing with it. And it is one that, unfortunately, because of farming and because of our density, the nutrient density in the soil, we're just not getting as much magnesium as what we used to. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is probably one of the top 3 recommended products because we're just not able to get it. Speaking with a healthcare professional, understanding what your magnesium levels look like, if you do micronutrient testing, but then talking about your symptoms. Do you have more headaches? Are you more like foggy brain? Do you have restless legs stuff going on? Are you constipated? Because that will kind of dictate which magnesium form may be best for you. If it's just a flat, I'm not really sure what's going on, I would just use a magnesium glycinate form. I think it could help just a wider range of patients and all the different types of conditions they're going through. But again, they are particular.
Thank you. That's great. We like to finish every interview we have with 2 questions. So I was wondering if you could, Kevin, could you tell our listeners, could you give them one assignment or an easy change that they can make when they're considering a supplement? What would that be?
Yeah, no, I think I'd go back to that start from scratch. Like, stop your whole supplement program, and I know that's scary for some people, or just remove everything and start from day one on the product that you're most interested in, or the one that you're like, hey, I think I want to start resveratrol, whatever it might be. Go back to baseline and then introduce it and be consistent with it. You know, whether you have an app timer or you're tracking it every single day, see how you feel, right? And if you're not noticing any changes over the course of at least 30 days, then either that product's not that great or your body just isn't responding to it, and that's okay. So I say start from scratch, remove everything, and see how you feel and monitor your progress, right? And this is something you can start with every new product that you're implementing. Like, I'm going to try this one now. Okay, do them separately. I wouldn't start with 5 products at once. Be like, I don't know, I think they're working. It's like, no, see if they're working or not by introducing one at a time.
Great, thanks.
I love that. All right, our next question is, here at the Digestible Podcast, we always say, don't panic, just pivot. Can you tell us about a change you have made in your life that you are really proud of?
Change I made, yeah, I think it's what kind of got me into this industry to begin with. You know, going through school, I was always like, I'm going to be a medical professional. I'm going to be, you know, an MD. I'm going to be a dentist. I'm going to be, you know, a prescriber, right? And the more I was going through schooling and the more I saw kind of what was happening out there in practitioner world, it's definitely focused and it's hard to break free from what other practitioners are doing. So what I did was I basically just like pivoted and it's like, hey, I like the dietary supplement side of things. I wanted to do as much research on that as possible rather than being kind of like pigeonholed into a specific type of medical profession, right? If I went through medical school, it's like, hey, I got to go this way. But in this dietary supplement space, you know, I can be associated with orthos and I can be associated with, you know, the oncologist and I can be associated with primary care physicians, right? I think it's a wider net. And that was something that I think, you know, for me was a big game changer. It's like, instead of going through schooling and you got to do it this way, you got to be a professional and get the initials behind your name. I did a switch, and it took a lot. You know, my parents were like, "What are you doing, dude?" But now I'm really happy that I made that choice because I can have conversations with a lot of different medical providers who are doing different things and help their patients individually. Where if I was just, hey, I'm going to be a doctor doing this, or physical therapist or a dentist or whatever, it's like you have that like track. And I just learned that I'm just more so like to be a little bit of everywhere instead.
We're really glad that you are, because
oh yeah, no, and I like it.
Knowledgeable, and I could talk to you all day.
Yeah.
I tell you that all the time.
We can hear your passion. It's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No,
You really are.
no, I'm happy. You know, in the end, we want to, you know, do well. We only got so much time on the planet. You want to ensure that you're living well, living happy, and doing the things you want the best of your capabilities.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Kevin. We appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great. Yeah, anytime.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Digestible with Kevin Finnegan, Senior Medical Consultant for Zymogen Supplements. You can find all of the information from today's podcast in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and follow us on social media at the Digestible Podcast. Let us know what else you'd like to learn more about, and remember, don't panic, just pivot. The content shared on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are not medical professionals, and the views expressed here are not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any health conditions. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making any health-related decisions.